This is part 3 of a 3-part series where we talk about actions that organizations can take to dismantle systemic racism within their companies. In part 1, we talk about specific actions that leadership teams can take. In part 2, we talked about actions that employees of color as well as white allies can take at all levels of the organization, regardless of their level. This is more of a grassroots effort. So I will be linking, if you miss part 1 and part 2, I'll be linking above to those videos. But in today's video, we will be talking about why it's traumatic for organizations to expect employees of color to be leading the charge, to be leading the discussions on systemic racism, and what organizations should do instead, as well as some tactical tips for employees of color that they can take to encourage self-care for their mental as well as emotional well-being. Are you ready? Let's do this. All right, employers, let me tell you a secret. If you didn't know, Black employees, employees of color, do not want to spend 90% of their workday educating and teaching their non-coworkers of color anything about race. That is not what they were hired to do. This is not their expertise. They may have life experiences about it, but coming to work should be a place where they're able to bring their best, most innovative, creative contributions without actually having to be discredited for their race. That's exactly what they want. They don't want any special treatments. They don't want to educate anybody about it. We spend enough time in society having to deal with the external forces of racism that hopefully we're expecting when we come into the workplace that we can actually just bring our best self, bring our most innovative and creative ideas, bring our talents and our gifts that we have been trained to do when we were educated or even as part of our previous experiences. This is what we want to do. We want to actually be light and free as everyone else. And so putting employees of color in a constant position of educating everyone else in the organization about racism is actually not what they were hired to do. And it is not their expertise. Their expertise may be their life experience. And putting them in that position as well may create a lot of resentment from their non-Black coworkers or their coworkers that are not of color. And so instead of putting them in this awkward position, actually, number one, what leaders should be doing is educating themselves. That's just a given, and we won't go over that again because I have addressed it in the first 2 videos. And second, what organizations really need to be doing is to bring in external consultants that are actually experts on the areas of diversity, inclusion, and equity, and having facilitated discussions where emotions are managed appropriately and there will be no repercussions to them. Because even if you do appoint someone in your organization of color into this job, this side job, right? That's not really the thing that we hire them for, but we put them into this side position. At the end of the day, they can't be as fair and as open and as frank as they would be because they're talking to an organization that's making employment decisions about them. Their managers are there that are going to be deciding whether or not they're going to be promoted, what's their next job opportunity, what is their performance appraisal is going to be, whether or not they should remain with the company or should be fired. All these things are already in the minds of these employees. And this additional burden of educating everyone else and not being sure what the actual repercussions is, especially in a lot of organizations where it's actually just lip service and people don't want to actually make real change, it's a bad position to put them in. And so bringing in an external consultant that has been paid to do this and has expertise in this area and will not be subject to retaliation or negative repercussions because of what they say is the smartest way to handle this situation. Okay, now moving on to the employees of color, to the Black employees. I'm speaking specifically to you right now. In this environment that we're going through specifically, it really is an environment where there is a lot of trauma that is being brought up. trauma that we have experienced over decades and years and centuries that we're not even aware of a lot of the times because we've been carrying this burden for so long. And I want to encourage you, it is the time to prioritize your mental health as well as your overall well-being. Self-care is of number one priority in this time. And so I want to encourage you to practice self-care. Whatever you need to do in order to take care of your physical, your mental, and your emotional health, it includes walking. It includes getting exercise in. It includes talking to people in your supportive community, friends and neighbors and other people that are really for you, allies, family members in particular. And most importantly, therapy, if that is needed. And a lot of times therapy is needed. It's not something that is very common within communities of color, specifically within Black communities, but it is time. Someone said to get a regular checkup from the neck up. It's really important. We are engaged in a time of physical and mental and emotional and psychological exhaustion. And so I want to encourage you to utilize employee assistance programs that your organizations may be offering, or whatever is offered in your medical care around mental health services. But it is time for us to take a step back and not try to educate everyone else, but really take care of our own mental, physical, and emotional health. And in addition to all the things that I just mentioned, getting outside, getting a breath of fresh air if you possibly can. Of course, wear your mask. We know it's be safe, but walking to the beach, journaling, meditating, praying, all these things are important for our physical, mental, as well as overall well-being. Second, find an organization that will nurture and celebrate your talent rather than stifling them. A lot of times we remain in organizations that are absolutely toxic, which gives a negative impact overall to our overall well-being, to our mental, physical, psychological health. And I read a study that says for every $1 that is earned in a toxic work environment, the repercussions from a health standpoint cost $2 because you're spending $2 to $3 on healthcare expenses. No wonder in our community, the rates of high blood pressure and heart disease and diabetes and chronic illness is so elevated because we're carrying long-term stress and toxicity in our body that is traumatizing us on a daily basis. And so do not remain in a place, even if it means you get your resume together, you get your support network that you needed, and it may take you weeks, months to find a new position, even in an environment like this. It is time for us to start prioritizing ourselves, start prioritizing our health, and not remain in a place that will not celebrate us, but they barely tolerate us. Number 3 is to seek financial empowerment. A lot of times we are forced to stay in situations at work because we have no economic alternative. And a lot of times we don't spend as much time that we should learning about financial tools, learning about financial resources, spending less so that we can save more. And therefore, in a time of need, such as times that we're in right now, coronavirus and everything that's happening in our environment, we don't have a backup plan. And when we don't have a backup plan, we are literally enslaved to the corporations that we're working for. And let me tell you, there is nothing like knowing that you have options. Even if you don't have another job on the horizon, because you have been able to save a certain amount and put a stash aside, you can feel free and you can feel comfortable because you know, even if you should lose your job or walk away, you are able to survive for 6, 7, 8 months, a year. Who knows? But I want to encourage us, if this is not something that you haven't done in the past, no shame in the game, no shame there. But it's time for us to begin to learn, and there is no better time to start than now. Number 4 way to take care of yourself during these times, it is stop trying to win over ignorant people. It is not your job to convince everyone on why you belong at the table, why you need a seat at the table, why Black Lives Matter. There are some people that will never be convinced, and it is not your job to convince them. It's not your job to expect from someone where they are literally physically, emotionally, mentally incapable of doing, incapable of empathy, incapable of caring about someone else's health and well-being. And so instead of, I see this on social media all the time. Somebody, some wise ass, excuse my language, saying something ridiculous because it's actually not visceral to them. It's not something that they're feeling and struggling with daily, and so they jump on social media or they say something in a meeting that is completely insensitive because somehow it's funny to them, somehow it's a joke to them, somehow they have no empathy for people's well-being, and so they're out here making jokes or they're out here saying insensitive things. And obviously in the workplace that needs to be addressed and actions need to be taken, but it's not our jobs to convince and educate anybody on why we are worth anything, because they're literally incapable. It's like you're expecting something from someone that they are literally incapable of, and it is not only a futile exercise, but it is completely disrespectful and detrimental to our own psychological and emotional well-being. And so when you see people that want to be ignorant and they want to say negative things, you obviously don't put up with the disrespect, but it is not your job to explain and to convince anybody of anything. My final point is take a break from the struggle, sis. Every day is not #fight the power day. Sometimes you gotta just live a little, relax, recuperate, rejuvenate. It is exhausting every single day to be fighting the fight, to be talking about race. Sometimes it's time to just have another glass of wine. Sometimes it's just time to get your dance on. Sometimes it's time to just go to the beach, whatever you need to do. I talked about self-care already, but I'm gonna talk about it again. Go out with the sisters, have fun on a girls trip. Do what you need to do. You might not be able to go dancing, I just said that, but I guess we are on quarantine still in many places, so you might not be able to do that. But the point is every day is not about the struggle. It is time, many times, a lot of times that we need to take to recuperate, to rejuvenate, so that we can actually bring our full selves to our relationships, to our work, to every area of our lives. And when we are exhausted from always being in the fight, that is literally impossible. I invite you to drop in the comments below which one of these points resonated the most with you. And subscribe if you loved this video. I talk a lot about empowerment specifically for women and how that we can stop underestimating and undervaluing ourselves so that we can advance in our career, advance in our business, or advance in what area of our life that we decide that we want to advance in. And I also would like to invite you, if you would like further information on how you can break through your own self-doubt and fear, join us Thursday, August 27th, I believe it is, the last Thursday and Friday. And for the entire month of September, I will be doing a live masterclass, a 90-minute masterclass, where I'll be going through how to break through self-doubt and other fears that are holding us back from taking the next step in our business, in our career, in our personal life, so that we can play big in whatever playing big means to you. So the information will be included down below in the description, so join us. I hope you enjoyed this 3-part series, and don't forget, I see you and I believe in you. You are not meant to shrink down lower, so rise up and own your power. Have a fantastic week.